Maya Johnson adjusted her blazer as she hurried up the steps of the municipal courthouse in downtown Chicago. The late morning sun reflected off the grand stone columns, casting long shadows across the bustling street. Inside the courtroom, a steady hum of voices filled the air, punctuated by the sharp rap of a gavel as the judge called for order. Maya slipped through the doors, quietly taking a seat in the back, her heart sinking as she glanced at the clock. She was 10 minutes late. "Next case!" the judge barked, his voice echoing through the chamber. His piercing eyes scanned the room as a clerk whispered Maya's name. She stood, smoothing her skirt as she approached the bench. The judge's gaze locked onto her, his expression hardening with displeasure. "You're late, Miss Johnson," the judge said, his tone icy. "Care to explain why my time is being wasted?" Maya raised her chin, meeting his glare with calm professionalism. "Apologies, Your Honor. I was delayed due to heavy traffic." The judge leaned forward, his voice rising. "Heavy traffic is no excuse. This is a court of law, not a casual appointment. I'm imposing a $700 fine for your tardiness." The courtroom fell silent, the tension palpable. Maya's eyes widened briefly, but quickly narrowed as she caught sight of several white defendants in the gallery, people who had also arrived late and left without so much as a warning. Taking a deep breath, she steadied herself. "Your Honor," Maya began, her voice firm but respectful. "I noticed that other individuals who arrived late this morning did not face the same penalty. I'd like to ask for consistency in the application of the court's rules." The judge's face darkened as he slammed his gavel onto the bench, cutting her off. The air in the courtroom grew heavier as Maya opened her notebook, revealing meticulous notes and highlighted entries. "This notebook contains detailed observations from today and prior cases in this court," she declared, her voice unwavering. "I've seen patterns. Late white defendants leave with a warning, while Black and Latino defendants are fined or berated. Your Honor, this isn't justice. It's discrimination." The judge's face turned ashen, his composure faltering. "You're accusing this court of bias?" he asked, his voice a mix of disbelief and defensiveness. Maya's gaze never wavered. "Not accusing, Your Honor. I'm presenting evidence," she replied firmly, "and I'm willing to take this beyond your courtroom if necessary." The murmurs in the gallery grew louder. Maya glanced at the audience, then back at the judge. "Your Honor, the law applies to everyone equally. At least it should. But here it seems the scales are tipped based on race." Her words struck like a hammer, reverberating in the silent room. Judge Barrett adjusted his robe, visibly uncomfortable. "Miss Johnson, this is highly irregular," he muttered, trying to regain control. But Maya was undeterred. "What's irregular, Your Honor, is the unequal treatment of defendants in this courtroom. I'm not here for a fight. I'm here for accountability. Justice demands it." The gallery fell silent again as Maya closed her notebook and folded her arms. "I believe this case isn't about my parking ticket anymore. It's about fairness and integrity in this courtroom." Judge Barrett stared at her, his gavel hovering over the desk but motionless. For a moment, he seemed unsure of what to do. The tension hung thick in the air until Maya's voice broke it. "So, Your Honor, what's your ruling? On my case and on the way this courtroom operates?" Judge Barrett hesitated, his gavel still hovering midair. The murmurs in the courtroom had returned, louder this time. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Miss Johnson, I will review your claims thoroughly, but I must remind you that this is a municipal court, not a platform for accusations." His voice wavered slightly, betraying his unease. Maya didn't back down. "Reviewing is not enough, Your Honor. Change begins with acknowledgement. If not here, then I'll take this to higher authorities." The tension in the room grew unbearable as Maya continued, her voice steady and clear. "Injustice thrives in silence, Your Honor. But I won't stay silent. Today is just the beginning." The judge's expression hardened, but Maya noticed the cracks in his demeanor. The gallery sat frozen, unsure of what would happen next. Suddenly, an older man in a gray suit, seated in the back of the gallery, stood up. "Your Honor, if I may," he said, his voice calm but authoritative. It was Mr. Wallace, a veteran civil rights attorney. The room shifted its focus to him. "Miss Johnson has raised serious points, and I believe this deserves an immediate and independent review." The judge's discomfort deepened. Mr. Wallace, this is highly irregular, he began, but the attorney cut him off politely. So is systemic bias, Your Honor. I recommend we address this before it escalates. Maya turned toward Mr. Wallace, her resolve unwavering. Thank you, sir, she said softly, before addressing the courtroom again. I'm not here to attack anyone. I'm here to protect the integrity of the justice system, something I know many of us hold dear. The judge finally lowered his gavel, his voice firm but resigned. Enough for today. Miss Johnson, you'll hear from this court soon regarding your concerns. But his words did little to mask the realization that he'd been cornered by the truth. As the session adjourned, Maya packed her notebook calmly, aware that the wheels of justice had just begun to turn. People in the gallery murmured among themselves, their whispers a mix of admiration and unease. Mr. Wallace approached her, offering a handshake. You've started something important, he said warmly. Maya smiled. I just want the system to live up to its promise, she replied. Behind her, Judge Barrett sat silently, his expression distant. For him, the gavel's weight suddenly felt much heavier. The following week, Maya's detailed documentation of her experience and her arguments against systemic bias reached the desk of the city's Judicial Oversight Commission. Her meticulous account of courtroom disparities, including racial discrepancies in fines, reprimands, and case handling, was undeniable. The report quickly gained traction. News outlets picked up the story, broadcasting Maya's brave stand across the city. Headlines read, "Bias exposed in local courtroom," and "Civil rights attorney joins forces with prosecutor against systemic discrimination." Community leaders rallied behind her, organizing forums to demand changes in judicial practices. Judge Barrett, once untouchable in his courtroom, found himself under investigation. Public records revealed years of disproportionate penalties for minorities. Confronted with mounting evidence, he resigned quietly, avoiding a formal trial. Maya's courage had brought down a cornerstone of injustice, paving the way for reform. The city implemented mandatory bias training for all court officials, a step that would soon inspire neighboring cities to follow suit. A new system for documenting and investigating judicial practices was established, ensuring transparency and fairness moving forward. Maya's actions didn't just bring change to one courtroom, they ignited a broader movement. Other communities began investigating their own judicial practices, inspired by her unrelenting pursuit of fairness. Maya became a prominent advocate for judicial reform, traveling the country to speak on the importance of equal treatment under the law. The courtroom that had once been a battleground now symbolized hope. Maya's bravery proved that one voice, when determined and unyielding, could dismantle even the most entrenched systems of injustice. As she left her final speaking engagement, she smiled, knowing the ripple effects of her actions would outlast her lifetime.